Welcome to the Mount Gretna School of Art lecture series. Today's lecture is in our classroom space at the Heights Community Building, where our students do all their drawing classes over the summer. And I'm Jay Noble. I'm the director of the school. And I'd also like to thank Stinson Strout for his support of our lecture series this summer, and Purpose One Visual Marketing for their season sponsorship of Mount Gretna School of Art. Just a reminder that Mount Gretna School of Art is a 7-week intensive program. It's a residential training camp for undergrad through graduate level students that want to spend time outside connecting with nature and learning about the nature of seeing and painting. We attract students from across the country and internationally every year that apply to get in. And one of the things that I think we're really proud of here is our ability to pay cost structure, which we've been able to do ever since the very first year. I was told that that was a pipe dream, and that only motivated me more. So from the very first year, we've been able to provide this equity-based admission process. And another important feature of our school is this unique community in Mount Gretna, which is one of the original Chautauquas, 400 of them around the country, and about 8 have survived. And Mount Gretna, Pennsylvania is one of them. So it's a unique community that's really understands the arts and culture and theater, and has really rallied behind our school. And this lecture series is like a symbiotic way of folding into the community here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Four Pillars Artist Residency, which we started both as a way to reconnect with our own alumni long after their students. Maybe they need a little boost, a little exposure to our audience during their early careers. And it's also a way to bring in new people to experience the Mount Gretna School of Art energy. A lot of the artists we have coming through have heard about the school from their own classmates and friends and painting friends. And so it's a way for new people to come in and be a part of the school. So really the goal with the program is to, promote these artists and expose them to our audience. And then we do manage to get them a show every year. So hopefully that works out again this year. Chances for them to exhibit their work and connect with patrons and the fans. So I'm going to introduce one of the two artists tonight. Both Ben Frederick and Emily Manning-Mingle are going to talk for about 20 minutes each. And then after that, there's going to be a chance to ask questions, and I encourage, that always makes it better. All right, Ben. I'm going to introduce Ben Frederick, who's been here 2.5, 3 weeks, been going on 3 weeks here, working in the faculty and visiting artist studio spaces over at our Artist Cottage 4. He has his MFA in painting from Edinburgh University in Edinburgh, Pennsylvania. And he's got his BFA in painting and ceramics from Miami University of Ohio. I think one of our students is in an MFA program right now. He's had solo exhibit at the Watchers and Windows at the Detroit Gallery. He's in New American Paintings, the Midwest edition, and has taught workshops at Thomas More University, Edinburgh University, Allegheny College. He's won some awards around Dayton and Edinburgh, and teaches at Rosewood Arts Center, Kettering, Ohio. But anyway, I want to turn it over to him now and let him take it from here.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks to everyone for coming, and it's been great being here. Yeah, so I'm Ben Frederick, and I'm from Dayton, Ohio, and I live there now with my family. And so I wanted to, for this talk, just kind of give kind of a overview from a little before grad school up to now. My older brother went to Arkansas on a business trip, and he stopped at Crystal Bridges And he saw a Fairfield Porter. I think it was October interior. And he said that he called me and said that that painting reminded him of my work. And at this point, it was a couple of years out of undergrad, and it was kind of a cool reminder of Fairfield Porter. I saw him in undergrad and loved his work, and so it was like, oh yeah, Fairfield Porter, that's awesome. Like I connected with kind of his light and his handling of paint and the subject. So I was kind of doing things like this, and but my work was not cohesive. I was doing several different things. This is kind of it took several years between undergrad and grad school, and kind of exploring different things. So trying out Porter here, and finding working in my sketchbook, really important, drawing from life. And I've always been interested in the kind of the line between abstraction and representation. I think that was kind of part of my interest in Fairfield Porter. That's why I'm interested in kind of the Bay Area figurative artists, including Richard Diebenkorn is a big one for me. Just working on these still lifes, kind of trying to see what would happen. I was also making these paintings that were, the improvisational paintings, just kind of reacting to whatever I was putting down on canvas, and also pulling from Richard Diebenkorn. But I think something that I noticed about my work was that, I wanted to have my own reference. I didn't want to just, pull from, I'm grabbing these shapes and things from Diebenkorn, and I'm like, where is he getting them? I don't know. And so that was kind of a big question for me. So going into grad school, that was the question I was trying to work on. And so, the line between abstraction and representation was still there. And so I started setting up still lifes again, and still lifes are a great way to explore things. And here there's also a mirror involved. That there's a line down at the bottom of the painting that is kind of the bottom of the mirror. So that was just kind of a way for me to kind of change things up in still life. Again, the mirror in the upper left corner of this painting. So I just liked how that disrupted space and got me thinking more about the shapes that I was seeing. Another idea I was working with was just kind of stacking objects, is just another way to kind of disconnect the objects from what they are, kind of thinking more about color and light. So while I was kind of playing with those still lives, I was also, I just continue to have the question about my own references and what I'm pulling from. And so I was making these drawings just from things around me of my own home. And I wanted to make paintings in a way, or I wanted to find a way to make paintings without being in front of the subject. So I was making these drawings, and I started adding color with crayon to kind of get some color notes. So this piece is from that time, kind of figuring that out. And then in my still life work, I kind of turned to this Canson XL paper that is like it's a paper that has a canvas texture, so it's not actually canvas. And I don't know, I kind of like it. It's kind of this dumb material that I really ended up liking and doing. I started doing these still lifes where this is kind of the game I played in, or I showed in the workshop, where doing line drawings and then kind of filling in with color, and the color flattens, and just kind of interesting to see what happens. And I was really interested in leaving white space too between things. And I don't know exactly what that was about, but that started coming into my bigger paintings. And then I also started using photos some more with my paintings as well. So this painting is called Honey Bunny. It's the back of my daughter's pajamas. She was actually sitting on my lap, and you can kind of see the rest of the room kind of in the corners. And this is one of the last pieces I made in grad school. I called it, I used to compare and I still do. And it was supposed to be kind of a dumb little joke about eating a pear, but I was just thinking it's also about, thinking about my influences and thinking how they connect to my painting. And I just felt like this painting really represents branching off and kind of feeling like I was making more of my own work. And a few pieces from more recently. This is a painting of our dining room. I'm just going to kind of give just a few thoughts about some of these paintings and kind of what I'm interested in them. I'm interested here with just kind of what I can get away with and with color, like the orange on the chair leg down at the bottom. I was also excited about there's a painting in the top in the middle. Was by my grandmother, who was also a painter. And the red in that was just this super weird red. I don't know if maybe it just comes across brown here, but this is a painting of my wife hanging up a coat at my parents' house. And this is kind of a thing I'm interested in. I'm interested in the kind of the painting being cut into thirds and how kind of the trim above the door there is kind of linking those division lines. And I feel like it kind of encloses the painting with the edges, which is with its own edges and it's kind of self-contained. That's, I don't know, it kind of is interesting to me. It kind of gives it a certain kind of energy. I take a lot of pictures. Sometimes this is like for occasions such as birthdays and things like that. But I'm also thinking about painting and thinking what works for a painting or kind of what I'm interested in a painting and what could work, what photo could work as a painting or not. Looking at how colors glow, looking at the rhythm of shapes across the picture plane, something I'm interested in. And this one's kind of a good example for me of my interest between the line between light and color. So especially the window hitting the wall in the middle there, kind of how that works as a color and works as light. Or there's a pillow in the bottom right here. The yellow is coming from the lamp, from a lamp that you can't see. And there's kind of a blue there that's coming from the window. And interested in how these work as both light and color. This painting is a painting of our living room. Just interested in how to simplify things, how much information to give, how much information I need to describe something, trying to flatten when I can. Yeah, it's kind of an ongoing problem. This painting is again, that same idea of simplification, but also I have this weird interest in trying to kind of paint everything in one shot. And most paintings don't turn out that way. This painting ended up working, I feel. And always trying to see how much I can kind of get away with. This is a portrait of myself in a mirror. a mirror. There's a mirror in our dining room, and so the top half is the mirror there, and the bottom half is a bookshelf. And these last two images are paintings that I was working on before I came here. This is center printer, and this is delivery. So I thought it was interesting that there's, kind of painting the landscape through these windows, and that's kind of I found myself exploring here, and yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Ben. And then now I want to introduce Emily Manning-Mingle, who has been also working up at the Faculty and Visiting Artist Cottage at 300 Birch for about 2.5, 3 weeks. And it's been a lot of fun having them both there. Very different personalities and very delightful in their own ways. Emily went to Boston University, where she got her BFA and her MFA in painting and studio teaching. And I know that some of our alumni that have been through Boston University are friends of hers. And so that's kind of fun. She's recently showed her work at Abigail Ogilvy in Boston and Katzman Contemporary in Dover, New Hampshire. And she's an educator from New York City. And she's got the President's Scholarship from Anderson Ranch and is an active member of the Boston Critique Group. Those are some nice little touchstones. I try not to go on too long, but I'll turn it over to Emily.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. And for people on Zoom, I see some familiar names. That's nice. And thanks for hosting this opportunity. It's been such a pleasure. I kind of forget the things I do. And I just want to highlight the Boston Critique Group really quickly, because that is something a friend of mine started after we graduated undergrad. And it's been something I've been involved with for like over 10 years now. And I feel like similar to this, as you find people in your community. And now a lot of those artists have seen my work change and evolve like over 10 years. And it's really important to have those relationships that, like sometimes it's nice to have a cold read where you don't have to talk about your past and it's just like what you're doing right now. But sometimes people who have seen your work for a long time can reference ideas and make connections, which are really valuable. So I just want to highlight that as students here, how important, I'm sure you all know that already, but how important that community is. So I'm grateful to be a part of it. I want to start with this painting from undergrad. This is a painting I made in my senior year, and it was kind of the first painting from undergrad that I felt there was like one painting before this, but this was bigger. And this was the first painting I was like, this is like my painting. As a BU undergrad, you do a lot of still lives and figure painting, and I didn't really care about that. And when I went to undergrad, freshman and sophomore year, you have classes, kind of like the core program here. And then you get to junior and senior year and you have your own studio space. And junior, I got to that studio space and was like, oh, like, what do I do? Like, no one's telling me what to do. I have to figure it out. And so that first semester of junior year was really hard for me. And I made a lot of self-portraits, which I enjoy making self-portraits. But I feel like after the portrait was done, I was like, I don't really care about looking at this. So second semester, I went on a study abroad to Venice. And one of our first assignments was to just make 10 drawings. So it was winter, it was January, and I started drawing the people I was living with in the space that we were living. This was our apartment. And it was, I think there was like a ground floor, and then there was 3 floors where students lived on top of each other. And then there was another house. And I realized that I didn't really care about drawing the people. I enjoyed living with the people, and I'm an only child. So it was really interesting. Like college was interesting to like have roommates, but like never had to live with siblings. And just living with other people was really interesting to me, and how they did things differently, how stuff accumulated. And I guess I was trying to make paintings that felt like genuine in some way. And it's taken a while to realize that like painting is all kind of made up. But that was kind of what I was thinking about at this time. And also another thing about this painting that was really confusing to me was that dresser that's in the back is like so huge, and that door was so tiny. And we were on the top floor, and I was like, how did this even get in here? I don't know what's going on. And so I did that for like undergrad, and then graduated, and every once in a while was able to make one of these larger paintings. This one is from 2019, and this is kind of the last one from this series. I might go back to these at some point in my life, but I made this one, and I kind of felt like this series was done. A little bit about the process. I would be in one position in the space and then take several photographs and stitch them together on the computer and then use that as the reference. So I was never actually painting these from real life. And often, like this one, I made this painting after we were in Venice. So I had done some drawings and a couple other paintings, and this one I actually made when I got back from that experience. So a lot of times I was relying on the photographs, but also like the memory of being in this place. And so this is 2019, this is 2016. So I was also, after undergrad, trying to figure out how to keep making work when I didn't have a dedicated studio space. And I didn't really want to oil paint that much at home. And I was looking around at things that I was living with, and I think like the way I live my life, kind of the ethos is I try to be really resourceful. So I was looking at discarded paper, catalogs, all kinds of things, and trying to make work with those things. And then I started making paintings that were related to, I was looking at quilts at this time and thinking about like a continuation of domestic space, but more abstractly and geometrically. And then like on the piece on the right, starting to try and layer this like deeper space with forms that come forward more, and how to create that push and pull of space. So I feel like now I have a chunk of time where I've made work, and I'm trying to find connections between all these different ways of working and things that visually look different. And to me, I think I'm always interested in space. And then this is something from grad school. This is the first year of grad school. It's tiny. A lot of things I made in grad school were actually like 10 inches by 8 inches. I didn't often work too big. And this is using fabric and stitching on the sewing machine, hand embroidery. I put fabric dye on this. I put bleach. And I was really interested in seeing how these like different materials interacted with each other, and how to make a mark as a painter, but using other types of materials to make those marks. Yeah, and I guess also with some of these abstract pieces, trying to get like certain sensations. So I think in the room spaces part, one of the things that was important was that they were big, because I wanted you to feel like you could experience it, not just see an image of that space, but when you were in front of it looking at it, you could like turn your head and kind of feel like you could look around the space. So I think in the abstract work, I'm kind of trying to find a similar sensation or feeling, as well as just formally what it looks like. These are about 11 inches by 14 inches. And trying to layer different materials. I went on a trip and again, started to realize like, well, what is important to me in my life, and kind of what Ben was talking about, like where I would look at a lot of other work, and I was trying to figure out like, what is work that I actually want to make. And I started painting these rocks and things that I had collected from these trips. And they kind of felt like portraits or still lives or symbols of that time. So again, there's an interest in place, but I didn't really want to depict the specific place. I was trying to find a way to symbolize or represent place in another way. And these are prints. I took a silkscreen class, and I was interested in the way that we typically think of silkscreen as this like one pass graphic technique. And these are you kind of like hand paint on the screen, and they have 15 passes of ink, and it's this very like built up layered effect. So I was interested in how to kind of use materials in a way that they're not always intended to be used. That's something interesting to me. But some of these I felt like sometimes the objects felt like so tight that I wanted to loosen up a little bit. And we went on a trip to Maine as a grad program, and I made it was the end of September. There wasn't heating, so we made fires a lot. And the fire was like a communal space where people were together. And so for me, making these, I could draw and work with other people. And I think in printmaking, I like that. I like that you're in a studio working with other people. So these are kind of small, and then I wanted to try to make something bigger. So this is stitched canvas. There's fabric dye. There's ink that a friend made, and there might be some acrylic paint in this layer as well. And then as I worked up, I was trying to leave like at the top some of those initial more expressive marks, while also giving more of a detailed image. And then I also I do this where I kind of work in a series. So I had that painting and then used silkscreen to bake it. So these are some process images where you can see how the layers are building up. So I made this one. And then as a side project, actually Jason's here. As a side project, we did this exchange within our program where people made pieces and then exchanged them. And I made this piece, and I kind of like this better than this. I felt like there's movement in it, and there's the way that the image doesn't quite line up kind of creates a flickering. So there's movement, and I realized like that's actually something I'm more interested in. So the next time I did a print, I decided to try and take an image and then take that same image, so I made 5 prints that started with that darker yellow, and then 5 prints that have that more coral color, and then 5 prints that had that greener yellow. And then once that base layer was done, each subsequent layer changed. So then at the end, you can kind of see on the process, I'm starting with the same image, but all the final prints are not, usually when you print the whole edition, the goal of a print is for them to all look the same. And so I was interested in using printmaking. I like layering. I like this technique, but to kind of do it in a more painterly way where the final edition, the goal is not that they look exactly the same, but the goal is to kind of see what the possibilities are within that technique and those materials. So again, the print on the left is an example of that series. And then the ones on the right were testing out color and kind of like seeing the process. And I actually, after I finished, I kind of liked those images better. So I think, I don't know, sometimes it's important to try things and then judge or kind of like learn from what your sensibilities are afterwards. So I was interested in like the fire because it's physical light. And as a painter, I think what we're often trying to do is paint light. And so I was interested in that. And then I was interested in using the light, the physical light as a material. So I had this video that I projected. So the projector is projecting light, and I projected it onto fabric. So this is just a little clip where you can see how the video looks. And one thing I was interested in is that this was for our thesis show, and there were these 3 windows. So I was interested in having this projection installed in this window so that you could see it at night, because usually a gallery is closed at night, which was great. then you can see like during the day, it didn't quite have the same effect. I liked how the glass, again, there's all this layering that's happening. And I think like when Brian was here talking about all those different planes, and then I was making this presentation, I was like, oh, I think I'm like interested in, and going back to the room paintings, like creating situations where like when we experience the world, we don't experience it on a flat little rectangle, like we experience it in 3D. So I think this using the fabric to hold the image, but then having the glass and having these different planes kind of is interesting to me as a way to create more of an immersive or experience of this image. So, and then we had this installation room. And again, my approach in grad school was kind of, I'm in this place, like I want to try different things, even though I never made a video, and it's a painting program. And a lot of people didn't know how to talk about video. And I didn't know how to talk about video, but I was like, I'm going to try it anyways. You can kind of see, I had a couple of clips. I had taken another trip with, to Ecuador, and I just kind of noticed I was taking these little videos of the water and the fire and kind of things that felt a little meditative, or, videos move. So I was interested in, again, trying to create more of an experience than just a solid image of a thing. So this video, it's 3 minutes, and we're not going to look at the whole thing, but it transitions into these different, there's water, there's rocks. I had like left one of the grad buildings one night, and the rain was like pitter pattering on the ground on this puddle. So that's in here, and just kind of observing light and water. And I just like observing things. And then, so recently I've been making these shadow paintings of the light coming through the trees onto the ground. And I like that I'm finding these images as I'm walking places. And I also like that I have a source to reference, but the image is abstracted. And I like things that have two things in one, or like opposites, or a push and pull of that. This is another shadow painting, and trying to play with color and not be like strict on the color that's in the resource I'm looking at, but more expressive with the color. And then when I've been here, I've been doing some drawing, and it's just kind of overwhelming being here. Like it's so dense. There's so many leaves, like the feeling of open space is different. And so I'm trying to see how to represent that on a 2D surface. The thing on the left is some fabric that I put bleach on. And so that kind of removed color from the fabric. And then I was walking and found that leaf that had a similar patterning effect. And I'm kind of thinking of that as an example of how to bring in references to the experience of being in the place versus just representing an image of the place. And similarly, like I was thinking about the first layer of the painting, having color or texture or something to respond to as I'm making an observational painting. So those rocks are from the driveway, and I put on that color and then painted over it. That's nice. It.
Okay, this question is for both of you. What are your goals or intentions for your time here?
I don't know. I mean, I was just I was just curious to see what would happen, and knew that the area, I mean, I knew a little bit about the program, so I was kind of interested to see, how that influenced things. So yeah, I was kind of open-ended, I guess.
I had a couple of goals like coming here, and then like it's always different once you get here. I think my goals are still similar, but like expanded. I really wanted to try and build a sketchbook habit, which I've started to do. I have sketchbooks, and then it'll be like 3 years, and then I start a new sketchbook. So I think for me, my normal life is like teaching. So that means I have to find ways to have my art practice fit within my teaching. And I think a sketchbook or having a strong drawing practice is a good way to do that. So that was kind of my thought, is like, maybe if I could build a habit here, that's something I could take with me afterwards. I was also interested in being in the woods. Like I live in Boston. And so normally I'm seeing a lot of buildings, and I ride a bike a lot. So I'm like on the road, and I was just interested in being here and kind of not having to worry about that. You just walk places. It's kind of like a slower pace. I think sometimes that lifestyle can affect your work, even if you don't know it's affecting your work. And then also it's balancing making connections with other people. I feel like you get here and you're like, well, these people exist here right now. And so balancing, how do I connect with you, the visiting artists, while I'm here, balancing the focusing on like making work and production versus that.
Ben, you referenced an appreciation for the Canva paper. Do you think there's a connection between what do you appreciate about that? Do you think there's a connection between your interest in flat shapes and abstraction with that flat surface of that paper that's different than a stretched canvas?
I mean, the paper was, it's cheap for one. And especially those still lifes, I would work very quickly. The surface was, it's fairly slick, but there's still texture there. I also kind of like, I felt like that particular brand is the paper like mimics, I guess, canvas or linen without it being too over the top. So it feels kind of like its own thing rather than trying to be something that's not. So just like texture there and all that. So I don't know about the abstraction thing. I'm not sure. I think it was just more about the way I was using paint on it.
I had a question for Emily. I liked what you had to say about when you were switching from painting to like the weaving and fabric, about thinking about the color as paint in a different form as color or something like that. And I was wondering if you could talk about like your reasoning from jumping from like, let's say the video and the fabric pieces back to painting, like what might be sort of going on in your head to lead you to go from one to the other and then back and forth.
I think part of it comes from teaching, where I'm often wondering what certain materials can do, or like I want to learn, like I'm curious about how to do things. And I think you were talking about like those first two abstractions that were kind of geometric, right? So part of the shift too was I was making those, and I noticed that a lot of the colors were very vibrant. And so I guess that was like a sensibility or a tendency. And so when I shifted, I was trying to shift and limit. I think that was a challenge I was giving myself with like starting the observation of the rocks. The print, that first print was just basically one color on paper. And so kind of seeing like, well, what was my tendency, and kind of going in the opposite direction. And then does that satisfy me, or do I need to like move back towards the other way? Kind of like a pendulum. Like, I think it's good to challenge your habits. And then you were talking about the like going to the video and then going back to the painting. I guess it just like feeds different parts. Like I make associations to food a lot with painting, where it's like, I want the paint to be like delicious, or like the colors are like make me hungry or something. And I think it's like, there's so many types of food. Like if I only ate cereal all day, I might get bored of that, but I'm always going to love painting. I think part of the other thing about trying to be resourceful and like trying to find ways to do that through the materials I'm choosing.
I have a question for both of you, because I feel like a common thread in both your work has been the sense of light that you create through color. And something that Brian said to me when he was here was that in nature, light reveals color, but in painting, color reveals light. So I wondered if you could both speak to how you use color to reveal light.
I think I need to think about that a little bit, but I think my gut is what I've noticed, so I tried to go out, I think going back to Claire's question, I don't really paint from the landscape, but I knew coming here, that's a big part of the program. So I wanted to do that, especially with the faculty here, and kind of see what happens when I do that. And I noticed that I often, if I'm starting on a white surface, it's white. So I'm going to want to go, I'm trying to like figure out where I am. So I'm going to go to like the opposite. I'm going to find my darks. And then I might go to my lights, but I feel like I'm often going to those like poles. And what I noticed is I don't really pay a lot of attention to the middle tones that much. And I think that nuance is actually really important. And I want to challenge myself. I don't know if I've done it here quite yet, but I want to challenge myself to like be more intentional with those midtones and like how much that contributes to the painting. And do you always really need to have that like bright white and dark, or can you get the effect that you want with maybe like the bright white to a mid dark, or taking out the bright white, like your light, like your mid-tone to your really dark. So what effect does that have when you change it? I think I don't really have an answer for that yet. I'm noticing I'm gravitate towards contrast and like high contrast.
When I work with color, it's very intuitive. And I guess I say that because I'm interested in how the relativity of color, how every color is interacting with every other color in a painting. So that's part of it. What are those colors doing? And those colors work as light or space or whatever in an image. But they're also doing something kind of as themselves on the surface of the canvas. And the other thing I'm interested in is, I had like a realization early on about using intensity of color to create light rather than white. Mm-hmm. And so I'm still, I guess, kind of playing with that and interested in that. But I mean, like all the other colors are working in their own way to convey whatever light situation, the whatever form is there, and kind of. So anyway, yeah, I guess that's it.
Emily, you've referenced a variety of materials and what you've appreciated about each of those. What do you think is the thread that is connecting those materials to your art practice, or the materials to each other? If you can speak to that, please.
I really like layering, which, I think I don't know. I feel like I do things and then I try to reflect on them. So sometimes I'm like, I don't know, is the source, I took a lot of printmaking classes in undergrad. So like, is that the source of why I like layering? I don't know. But I could guess maybe that's why, because when you're making a print, it's different than a painting where you often have to like make the image and test it and make the image and test it. You're not building up on one surface the whole time. And so for me, that space in between when the image is changing is interesting. It I don't know, it allows a different breathing space. I was talking to Heidi today about like Stanley's paintings, and some of those paintings take like years and years and years and years. Right. And so like, that space between as that painting is getting built up becomes part of the painting. So I think like I like liquidy paint and thick paint. Like I like having the full spectrum of what the material can do, and I like layering because I'm often noticing connections, or like the light today matches your shirt, or like finding those visual connections helps me visual connections are a kind of a tangible way of seeing how we are connected. I always think like if you and me spent enough time talking together, we could probably find a commonality or like some kind of connection. And I think color is a way, or like a strong visual connection is kind of symbolic of those relationships. So I think that's why layering is interesting to me, or collaging and bringing different sources together is my brain is very associative. Like when I think about things, it makes me think of another thing and like how they're connected.
My question kind of comes to what you were just talking about. Like if you were to have a show where you featured paintings in them, would all of those connections be a part of like the experience for someone looking at the show? Like would that be important to you to include the bleach leaf or the fabric? Like is that an ins to a means for you to like understand the painting, or is that like how would you display that for someone going to the show?
I think this part is where it is kind of important to make a lot of things and then be able to edit them. And I think I like curate. I like rooms. I like spaces. To me, there's like a feel of like this feels comfortable or organized, or like it doesn't have to be tidy, but like space has a composition to it. And I think hanging a show is similar. And I think if you have a bunch of pieces and you start to look at them together, like I notice a lot of times I'll have sets of something, or even on the slideshow, I kind of like pairing pieces. I think pairing pieces is a way to make those visual connections. I think if I was going to have a show and include some of those like artifacts, I might call them, I think that might exist on a separate wall as like a reference board. I've seen that in shows before. But I do think it's an interesting question, like how much does the show look like your studio and how much does it like its own separate thing? I guess, yeah, it would be kind of like a board together. I don't think I would put the leaf next to the fabric in the show because in some ways that's almost like too direct. And it's more like the sensation or the feeling of it. And hopefully you can like get there yourself. Maybe you don't go to leaf, but maybe you get that idea that there's like light or, you know, the effect of it. It might be a little too obvious otherwise.
Hey, thank you. Our own students, their last day to paint is Wednesday, which is 2 days away. And so they're all buckling down on doing their best work of the summer. And I know you both have about 2 weeks left here. Are you comfortable talking about what you're going to focus on here in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working on flower fern paintings and a couple of things going on from around here and seeing if I can make those happen.
One thing I haven't gotten a chance to try yet, that there's stuff called Solar Fast that's similar to cyanotype, but it comes in different colors. And because I was making those shadow paintings, I wanted to try and see. I don't know how much quantity I need, so I don't know how long the bottle will last if it's like for one test. But I want to paint this liquid that when the sun hits it, it changes it. So it's like another way of using light as part of the process, like the physical light as part of the process of making the image. There's I kind of want to do a couple more landscape paintings within the trees and like the immersion of the trees and see where those go. But then I also have a couple of bigger pieces that I'm trying to figure out that are on fabric and more, I'm trying to figure out how to keep them in the realm of painting and not only use like quilting references because they're on fabric, and kind of figure out part of how the observed paintings impact other work on fabric. And right now it feels very separate. And so that's something I'm interested in.
Nice.
And I want to come see what y'all are doing.
So thank you. Everybody clap now.